All right, today we're diving into one of the most incredible stories from World War II. It's a tale of deception so brilliant, so audacious, it almost sounds like fiction. We're talking about Operation Mincemeat.
So, let me ask you this. How can a dead man win a war? I know, it sounds completely out there, right? Like something straight out of a Hollywood script. But this wasn't fiction. This was the actual, very real question at the heart of a top-secret Allied plan.
And in 1943, that's exactly what a secret operation was designed to do. You see, in the middle of this massive global conflict, this high-stakes chess game, the most powerful weapon wasn't always a tank or a plane. Sometimes it was just an idea. A really, really clever idea.
All right, so let's get into it. An impossible target. Now, to really get why they needed a plan this crazy, you have to picture the situation in Europe back in 1943.
Okay, so the Allies had just wrapped up a major victory in North Africa. The big question was, what's next? And the answer was pretty obvious to literally everyone, including the Germans. The most logical next step was to invade Sicily. It was the perfect gateway to Italy, what Churchill famously called the soft underbelly of Europe.
But here's the problem. Because it was so obvious, Sicily was a trap. The Germans knew the Allies were coming, and they were ready. So the Allied command had this terrible dilemma. They could attack Sicily directly, which would mean facing a wall of German defenses and honestly catastrophic casualties, a total bloodbath. Or they had to find another way. They had to somehow trick the entire German high command into looking in the wrong direction.
And that leads us to our next section, a deceptive solution. This is where things get really interesting. The Allies realized they couldn't just brute force their way through, so instead of trying to outmuscle the Germans, they decided to outthink them. We're moving away from tanks and bombs and into the world of psychological warfare.
And here's the absolute genius of what they came up with. The goal wasn't to hide the invasion. I mean, how could you? You're talking about thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of soldiers. It's impossible to keep that a secret. So they didn't even try. The plan was to make the enemy look in the completely wrong direction.
Okay, so for a deception this big to actually work, it had to be perfect. There were three keys. First, you have to get false information, fake invasion plans, right into German hands. Second, it had to look totally authentic, and more importantly, like an accident. And third, and this is the most critical part, you had to make the Germans believe they had discovered it themselves. It had to feel like a huge win for their own spies, not like something that was handed to them.
Which brings us to the heart of the operation, the man who never was. This is where the plan stops being just a concept on a whiteboard and becomes one of the most incredible, detailed hoaxes you've ever heard of. They had to create a person from thin air.
So everyone, meet Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. A picture-perfect officer, right? A man with a promising career, even a fiancée waiting for him back home. The only problem? He didn't exist. He was a completely fabricated identity, a ghost created by British intelligence for one single, incredibly important mission: to carry those fake invasion plans.
Now, for this ghost to be believable, he needed a body. And this is a pretty somber part of the story. The body of a homeless man named Glyndwr Michael, who had recently died in London, was chosen for the role. It's a sad detail for sure, but having a real human body was absolutely crucial. Without it, the whole plan would fall apart.
And this is where the level of detail just becomes mind-boggling. They didn't just create an ID card. They created a life. Look at this stuff. They put personal letters in his pockets from his fiancée, bank statements, even theater ticket stubs to show he'd been out and about in London. My favorite detail? An engagement ring receipt. And get this, they even gave him a small bank overdraft. Why would they do that? Because perfect people are suspicious. A little bit of debt, a few loose ends, that made Major Martin feel real, human, and totally, completely believable.
This quote really nails the psychology behind the whole thing. Effective deception allows the enemy to draw their own conclusions. See, the fake documents didn't have a big sign on them saying, "Invasion, target Greece." No way. It was much more subtle. They just dropped little hints, breadcrumbs, scattered through those personal letters and official-looking papers. They basically gave the Germans a bunch of dots and let them connect them to form the exact picture the Allies wanted them to see.
Okay, so the man who never was is ready. He's got a name, a rank, a backstory, and a pocket full of secrets. The stage is set. Now for the most nerve-wracking part. The plan in motion. It's time to see if this whole crazy scheme will actually work. The delivery had to be just as clever as the fake identity. So here's what they did. A British submarine quietly surfaced off the coast of Spain and gently released Major Martin's body into the water to be washed ashore. Now, why Spain? Well, Spain was officially neutral, but it was also full of German spies and sympathizers. It was the perfect place for the documents to accidentally fall into the right hands. And sure enough, just as they planned, Spanish authorities found the body, the Germans got wind of it, and they took the bait.
And the Germans didn't just nibble at the bait, they swallowed it whole. Hook, line, and sinker. The incredible personal details made Major Martin seem completely real. But the real key was that the fake plans pointed to an invasion of Greece and Sardinia. This played right into a powerful psychological trap called confirmation bias. The German command was already worried about an attack there, so these documents confirmed their biggest fears. It made them want to believe it was real. Just a masterclass in using your enemy's own assumptions against them.
And you can see the result right here. This is the payoff. German forces started moving. We're talking elite panzer divisions, aircraft, thousands of troops, all being pulled out of Sicily. And where did they go? Straight to Greece and Sardinia, the fake targets. They were literally emptying out the real target to go defend a phantom invasion, leaving Sicily wide open.
So the trap is set. The German army is looking the other way. The Allies are poised to strike. This one single act of deception is about to have an impact that will literally rewrite the war.
And then, in July 1943, it happened. The Allies launched Operation Husky, the real invasion of Sicily. And because of Major Martin and his secret documents, the invading forces met way less resistance than anyone had dared to hope. The plan hadn't just worked, it had worked perfectly.
And the consequences were immediate and huge. The Allied advance was incredibly rapid. Thousands upon thousands of lives, on both sides, were saved because the fighting was so much lighter than expected. The shock of losing Sicily so quickly was so great that it actually led to the arrest of Mussolini and the collapse of his fascist government in Italy. Just incredible.
So what's the long-term impact of all this? Well, it's massive. Operation Mincemeat proved once and for all that intelligence and cleverness can be more powerful than pure firepower. It showed that psychological manipulation is a devastating weapon of war. It basically turned the enemy's own assumptions into their biggest weakness. It's no wonder that even today, this operation is still taught as a textbook case study in intelligence communities all over the world.
So think about that. One of the key turning points in the war in Europe was made possible by a man who never even existed. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other invisible victories are out there? The ones won not with armies on a battlefield, but with clever ideas in the shadows. How many of those have completely shaped the world that we live in today?